Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Play Dragon Age Origins. As I said last time, this time will be a Codex episode. So, I can't believe that you would be unfamiliar with it by this point, but if you are, in a Codex episode I do not conduct any gameplay. So if you have the next episode available to you and you don't want to sit through me reading all of this, feel free to skip ahead. Also, I've got some laundry going in the background. I apologize if you can hear that while I'm talking to you. Oh, right, yeah. Oh my gosh, I forgot about all the DLCs for There's Awakening and all that stuff. Yeah, we're not done yet. I keep thinking like, oh yeah, we're close to the end of the game, but DLCs. Okay. Creatures. Archdemon. Could be wrong, but I feel like we only got an update to this one. Maybe this last paragraph or so. But that said, I'll read it again, even if it's repeating myself. Let's see. In darkness eternal they searched for those who had goaded them on, until at last they found their prize, their god, their betrayer, the sleeping dragon Dumat. Their taint twisted even the false god, and the whisperer awoke at last in pain and horror, and led them to wreak havoc upon all the nations of the world. The first blight. Trinities 8-7. The false dragon gods of the Tevinter Imperium lie buried deep within the earth, where they have been imprisoned since the Maker cast them down. No one knows what it is that drives the Darkspawn in their relentless search for the sleeping old gods. Perhaps it is instinct, as moths will fly into torch flames. Perhaps there is some remnant of desire for vengeance upon the ones who goaded the Magisters to assault heaven. Whatever the reason, when Darkspawn find one of these ancient dragons, it is immediately afflicted by the taint. It awakens, twisted and corrupted, and leads the Darkspawn in a full-scale invasion of the land, a blight. Orzammar was once the Tevinter god of beauty. In ancient times, he was worshipped by musicians, artists, and poets. The Feast of Orzammar was the grandest celebration of the year, an event that lasted a full 12 days. Plays and entire symphonies were written in his honor. Now he's a maddened husk of his former self, filled with nothing but a desire to destroy all life. So that must be the Archdemon we've seen in our dreams, and the one we encountered in the Deep Roads, I would think. Broodmother. It is well known that Darkspawn carry off those captured in their raids to underground lairs. Most assume that the prisoners are eaten, or somehow tainted and turned into Darkspawn themselves, though this could never account for the sheer numbers of the horde. Forays made by Grey Wardens into the underground have uncovered the answer. When exposed to the Darkspawn taint, men are driven mad and eventually die. Women, however, undergo great pain and gross mutations that cause most of them to perish. Those that survive, however, become the grotesque broodmothers. These giant, twisted behemoths birth many Darkspawn at a time. A single broodmother can create thousands of Darkspawn over the course of her lifetime. Each type of Darkspawn is born from a different broodmother. Humans produce Hurlocks, Dwarves produce Genlocks, Elves give birth to Shrieks, and from Kunari are born the Ogres. Ugh. It's kind of perverse, disgusting. Elves give birth to Shrieks. Shrieks are such a different thing from the other ones. You know, Shrieks almost feel more like ghosts or wraiths than they do Darkspawn. Deep Stalker. A fool trusts his eyes. A wise man fears every rock is a deep stalker. Dwarven saying. Possibly the strangest of all the creatures found in the deep roads is the deep stalker. Tezpadam, as the dwarves call them, hunt in packs, generally by burrowing underground and then striking when their prey is in their midst. Stalkers come in several types. Spitters have venom glands and can spit secretions that slow or injure their prey. Jumpers hurl themselves at their targets, knocking them down and making the kill easier. The most common variety scares its prey, leaving the unfortunate victim helpless against the rest of the pack. I'm only thinking about this just because I know some modest amount of information about underground ecosystems, just because my dad spent a lot of his adult life as a hobbyist caver, hobbyist spelunker. But ecosystems in caves don't really allow for large animals, especially large predatory animals, because of the lack of input of energy, right? Like, there's no sunlight reaches most cave interiors, and so you don't have plants doing photosynthesis. You don't have abundant sources of food. Animals that survive in caves, cave fish, salamanders, cave crawdads, like the crustaceans, they survive because stuff washes into the cave from elsewhere. Basically, they don't really prey on each other that much, if at all. So it's interesting that I know that the deep roads aren't technically caves; they're more like carved out passageways, essentially. And you can see there's lots of lava down there that's providing heat and light and everything. So maybe the ecosystem would be different if you could actually survive near all that lava, which I don't think you could in real life. But anyway, I'm just thinking to myself, like, yeah, you don't see velociraptor-sized predators in cave systems because there's just not enough. There's not enough energy down there in whatever form, in edible form to help a large predatory animal like that subsist. There's just not enough food. Dragon. Okay, I know I've read about dragonlings and drakes. I feel like I've read about dragons. I guess I haven't read about high dragons? A fully mature adult female dragon is the high dragon, the great monster of legend, the rarest of all dragon kind. These dragons hollow out massive lairs for themselves, for they need the space to house their harem of drakes, as well as their eggs and the dragonlings. High dragons are seldom seen. They spend most of their time sleeping and mating, living off the prey their drakes bring back. But once every 100 years or so, the high dragon prepares for clutching. By emerging from her lair and taking wing, she will fly far and wide, eating hundreds of animals, most often livestock, over the course of a few weeks, and leaving smoldering devastation in her wake. She then returns to her lair to lay her eggs and will not appear in the skies for another century. So, male dragons don't evolve past the drake stage. Yeah, here we go. The forelegs grow the vestigial spurs where wing membrane might have been. However, when they're talking about the archdemon, they say specifically that Urthemiel was the god of beauty. He was worshipped by musicians. He is a full-on dragon, right? So why the hell is he a full-on dragon if only females become full-on dragons? Maybe because he's a god? But I thought that they were false gods. I thought that the Maker is god and the dragons were just fooling the Tevinter Imperium. Maybe I don't know. Clearly I don't understand something. Nug. Hip deep in mad nugs, our screams deafen their keen ears. It will be nug poop. Okay. From songs that only nugs can hear by Paragon Ebrion. 584 Exalted. The nug is an omnivore common to the deep roads, a hairless creature that is almost blind as well as completely docile. It spends most of its time wading in shallow pools as well as mud pits, feeding on small insects, worms, and, in a pinch, limestone and simple metals. Indeed, the digestive system of the nug is legendary, able to make a meal out of almost anything a nug finds on the cavern floors. Nugs reproduce rapidly, spreading into any niche, I guess, within the deep roads they can find, and serve to support a variety of predators such as giant spiders and deep stalkers. So too do dwarves make meals out of them. Nugs are, in the poorer slum portions of Orzammar, one of the most common sources of meat available. Some dwarves even domesticate the creatures, claiming to find the creatures' high-pitched squeaks pleasing. Can't say that Georgian ever found them pleasing. Shadow of the Empire. There's a lot here that we haven't revealed yet. We've only got one more creature unrevealed. But lots of items. Makes me wonder what I've missed. Shadow of the Empire. The Crows of Antiva may be the most famous and most expensive of Thedas' assassins, but they are not the most active. That dubious honor belongs to the Shadows of the Emperor, the personal cadre of killers employed by the throne of Orlais. Almost exclusively, the Shadows work against other noble families in Val Royeaux. No one knows who they are, not even the sitting emperor, and some in the court dismiss them as only a myth. The assassins have slipped into aristocratic life working as palace servants, ladies-in-waiting, and on one notorious occasion, the Chamberlain himself. This armor was made for use by the Shadows whenever the grand game should wander out of hand. I don't even know if I retained that armor. I might have gotten rid of it. Magic and religion. Still a lot here that hasn't been revealed either. Lyrium. I gotta think I've read most of this. Or maybe not. It looks like it's all one entry by Brother Genitivi. Okay. More than half the wealth of Orzammar comes from a single extremely rare substance, lyrium. The Chantry believes it to be the waters of the Fade, mentioned in the Canticle of Threnodies, the very stuff of creation itself, from whence the Maker fashioned the world. Only a handful of mining caste families hazard extracting the ore, finding veins in the stone quite literally by ear. For in its raw form, lyrium sings, and the discerning can hear the sound even through solid rock. Even though dwarves have a natural resistance, raw lyrium is dangerous for all, but the most experienced of the mining caste to handle. Even for dwarves, exposure to the unprocessed mineral can cause deafness or memory loss. For humans and elves, direct contact with lyrium ore produces nausea, blistering of the skin, and dementia. Mages cannot even approach unprocessed lyrium. Doing so is invariably fatal. Despite its dangers, lyrium is the single most valuable mineral currently known. In the Tevinter Imperium, it has been known to command a higher price than diamond. The dwarves sell very little of the processed mineral to the surface, giving the greater portion of what they mine to their own smiths, who use it in the forging of all truly superior dwarven weapons and armor. What processed lyrium is sold on the surface goes only to the Chantry, who strictly control the supply. From the Chantry, it is dispensed both to the Templars, who make use of it in tracking and fighting Maleficarum, and to the Circle. In the hands of the Circle, lyrium reaches its fullest potential. Their Formari craftsmen transform it into an array of useful items from the practical, such as magically hardened stone for construction, to the legendary silver armor of King Calenhad. When mixed into liquid and ingested, lyrium allows mages to enter the Fade fully aware, unlike all others who reach it only while dreaming. Such portions can also be used to aid in the casting of especially taxing spells for a short time, granting a mage far greater power than he normally wields. Lyrium has its costs, however. Prolonged use becomes addictive, cravings unbearable. Over time, Templars grow disoriented, incapable of distinguishing memory from present, or dream from waking. They frequently become paranoid, as their worst memories and nightmares haunt their waking hours. Mages have additionally been known to suffer physical mutation. The Magister Lords of the Tevinter Imperium were widely reputed to have been so affected by their years of lyrium use that they could not be recognized by their own kin, or even as creatures that had once been human. Creepy. Wasn't it the Magister Lords of the Tevinter Imperium that invaded city, the Maker's City? What's the name of that stupid city? Now called the Black City. I can't remember what it was called before it was tainted. I'm just wondering, the story is that they invaded and then they were turned into the Darkspawn, right? But here it's saying, like, hey, these guys were so fucking tripped out on lyrium that they were actually kind of unrecognizable as human to begin with. So I'm kind of wondering, like, wait a minute, how much of Darkspawn is taint and how much of it is possibly lyrium mutation? Okie doke. Culture and history. Woohoo, here's where we lit some up. Yeah, well, there's still so much not known, though. It's surprising. Okay, the castes. Visitors to Orzammar should keep in mind that the hierarchies of Dwarven society... Hang on a second. Oh, this is all one entry, too. Yep. Hierarchies of Dwarven society are much more complex than our own. It is easy to gravely insult a man simply by mistaking his position. Since this can lead to unnecessary loss of life and limbs, I will attempt to mitigate the danger for my fellow travelers. The society of Orzammar is divided into nobles, warriors, smiths, artisans, miners, merchants, and servants. Now, you are undoubtedly saying to yourself, we have all those divisions among our own people. This is a dangerous misconception. Certainly, we do have nobility, artisans, merchants, and these positions are largely inherited from our parents. However, the younger children of noblemen often choose to be artisans or soldiers. Sons of merchants may join the army, or become servants, or apprentice themselves to a craftsman. This is all freely chosen, limited perhaps by the circumstances of birth, but still chosen. What is a matter of choice for most human folk is dictated entirely by birth for dwarves. No one may become a smith who was not born to smith-caste parents. A servant who marries a noblewoman will never be a noble himself, and although his daughters would be nobles, his sons would be servants, for daughters inherit the caste of their mother, while sons inherit the caste of their father. That's a fucked up system, seriously. I mean, I know it's modeled off of similarly fucked up human systems. It's real life human systems, I mean. It's just such a bizarre choice. We'd think that the people in charge of a system like that must benefit from it so much that they're willing to risk their own species, their own culture being so inflexible, you know? Inflexibility is a death sentence under certain circumstances for an entire people, right? For an entire culture. It's just a little weird that people be like, yes, it's so important to us that we follow these stupid rules that we will actively harm our own ability to survive if things go wrong for us. I don't know. It just seems like somebody must really be benefiting from this. A few powerful people must be benefiting in order to stick to this inflexible system. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Gentv. Life in Orzammar. Oh man. Okay, here we go. The dwarves in Orzammar are quite unlike those found in most human cities. Although Orzammar derives its vast wealth from trade with human kingdoms, all dwarves who come to the surface to trade are stripped of their position in society. Dwarven merchants are so ubiquitous in human cities that many people labor under the impression that all dwarves are merchants, or that their whole race worships corn and trade. But these surface dwarves are atypical creatures, the ones willing to give up all ties to their kin and sacrifice their rank in order to conduct business. This is kind of reminding me of like the way the Klingon society is portrayed in Star Trek. Sorry, Star Trek nerding out for a moment. But you only ever... I could be wrong. Maybe there's an exception on like some one-off episode where they're like, hey, meet this... meet this poet Klingon. But I'm pretty sure that they portray every Klingon in Star Trek as being of a warrior caste, or if not of a warrior caste directly, still their culture is warrior culture, right? Honor and violence, solving your problems with violence, all that stuff. Trying to think if they... I don't think that they ever describe or explain how Klingons farm food or make clothing or educate. Like I don't remember ever reading or hearing about that in the show or the movies. I could be wrong. If somebody knows of a counterexample, please tell me. I haven't watched all of it. I haven't watched any of Voyager or Enterprise or any of the new Paramount Plus shows just because I'm not subscribed to it. So if it's covered in any of those, I'd be curious to hear what they say about it. But anyway, the way that they're talking about humans above ground believing that all dwarves are merchants just because that's how they see them. That's the ones that they see. It's like how in Star Trek every Klingon that a Federation officer sees is a warrior, so it's kind of like, man, it's a whole freaking culture of warriors? That's crazy. It can't really work, right? Below ground, the dwarves are a people obsessed with honor, their own and that of their family. Most nobles incorporate chainmail even into formal gowns, because slights and insults often turn deadly. They are a people who revere excellence and strive to achieve it in all things. Even members of the servant caste have been elevated to paragons, usually posthumously, in recognition of remarkable service. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar, by Brother Gentv. I don't think that Georgianne would really care to become a paragon just because she really dislikes the culture that she was raised in. She kind of hates dwarven culture as an institution. I don't think that she necessarily would have before she came to the surface. Obviously, she thought she was being treated unfairly, she and her family, being castless and all. But I don't think she thought, like, this whole system is fucked up until she got to the surface and saw how people treat her up here. Just seeing that there's an alternative, there's a different way of doing things. And people don't need to live like castless slobs. Not slobs, but, you know, being treated like second class, third class, fourth class citizens, really. So I don't think that she would really be impressed if Orzammar decided to make her a paragon, let's say. She'd be like, okay, yeah, whatever, it doesn't mean anything to me. For that reason, that she doesn't really respect Dwarven culture. But she also thinks it would be kind of badass if somebody that was casteless, that was literally like kicked out of Orzammar, was either going to go to jail, possibly be executed, or had to join the Grey Wardens in order to avoid those fates. If she got elevated to Paragon, it would kind of be like a fuck you to everybody that's in charge down there. Although, of course, everybody that's in charge would use it as like, aha, see, even the castless can become Paragons, which she would kind of hate. But it would just be kind of a... So there's a part of her that's like, fuck your titles, they don't mean anything. And then there's another part of her that's like, you know what, if I did get a title, that would kind of fucking rule to show all you assholes, but then those assholes would just use her as a... She'd just become the next, like, oh, Paragon Georgianne. She would, if she were here, she would agree with me, you know. We should be doing this thing. They would just use her in power plays and stuff. Deep Roads. The codex entry for the Deep Roads is considerably shorter than the actual walk through the Deep Roads. There isn't a dwarf alive who remembers the Deep Roads as they once were. They were the network of tunnels that joined the Taigs together. To be honest, it isn't even right to give them such a simple term as tunnels. They are works of art, with centuries of planning demonstrated in the geometry of their walls, with the statues of the paragons that watch over travelers, with the flow of lava that keeps the deep roads lit and warm. The cloud gazers up on the surface talk of the imperial highway built by the magisters of old, a raised walkway that crossed thousands of miles, something that could only have been built by magic. Perhaps it is comparable to the Deep Roads, although we dwarves didn't need magic. We dwarves? Oh. Conversation with a member of them. Okay, so this is actually a dwarven mining cast dude or lady saying this. I suppose it doesn't matter anymore. The Darkspawn rule the Deep Roads now. When Orzammar sealed off the entrances to the Deep Roads, abandoning everything that lay out there, we handed over the kingdom that was to those black bastards forever. That's unfortunate phrasing. To think that there are Genlocks crawling over Bonamar now, tearing down our statues and defiling our greatest works. Corruption covers everything we built out there. Every dwarf who goes out and comes back says that it gets worse with each passing year. The foulness spread a little further. And the cloud gazers think the darkspawn are gone just because they aren't spilling out onto the surface? Ha! One day when Orzammar is gone for good, they'll find out differently. Those darkspawn won't have anywhere else to go but up, and they'll do it. The surface folk will have themselves a blight that will never end. Transcript of a conversation with a member of the Dwarven Mining Cast, 890 Blessed. Cut to Kal Sharak. I have no memory of this, hang on. 1155 of the Tevinter Imperium will be known as a year of painful decisions, but we cannot waver. The threat we face is the greatest we have known. If we are overrun, all trace of the ancestors' glory will be undone. Orzammar must stand, and it must stand alone. Hormak, Kal Sharak, Gundar, we have lost contact and must assume they are lost to the Horde. We must seal the weakest link in our defense, the deep roads that lead to our fallen brethren. I have ordered our finest demolitionists. I mean, I know if you're mining and tunneling and stuff, it makes sense to have demolitionists. I don't know, just the idea of saying our finest demolitionists. The dudes who are the absolute best at blowing the fuck out of rock. I know, I know that if you have a broad group of people who do one task, you're going to have people who are better at it than others. I know that makes inherent sense. Just the idea of saying, bring me our finest demolitionists. Yes, sir. Just so that you would have people in mind already. It's kind of funny. Okay, yeah. Finest demolitionists, place the charges. I ask that each of you think of those we have lost. They served as the warning that spurred us to action, and I know the stone will embrace them. They are the foundation of our survival, and they will not be forgotten. From a proclamation by High King Threestone. I don't remember ever hearing that name. 200 years! Kal Sharak lives, you stone-forsaken deep lords! There is no greater hatred than a brother at your throat, graffiti offering. I have no idea where that entry came from or what it had to do with. Don't remember that at all. Legion of the Dead. This one I do remember. Yes, Stone's greeting, friend. You will fight ceaselessly in the Legion of the Dead. Motto of the Legion of the Dead. The Legion accepts all. So I was told by one of the legionaries. So this is an interesting thing. The Roman legions, the term for a member of the Roman legions was legionary, or at least it is in English. I'm not sure what it would have been in Latin. And in French, members of the French legion were called legionnaires, not legionaries. But whenever I do this myself too. Whenever I'm referring to legionaries, I tend to say legionnaires. I don't know why that is, and here they did it too. I don't think, given that French is actually has an analog in this universe, namely Orlais, I don't think the dwarves would refer to themselves as legionnaires. I think they would call themselves legionaries, right? Because that's the anglicized version of the word for a Roman legionary. It's just interesting that they used legionnaires. I don't know. Anyways, I'm just now imagining this dwarf has a French accent for some reason. I was told by one of the legionnaires himself, a dwarf who waited quietly at the entrance to the deep roads for the rest of his unit to assemble. They gathered slowly, each equipped with heavy armor and fine weapons, each painted with grim tattoos applied at their funerals the night previous. Well, that's right, they have funerals while they're still alive, I think, right? For that is the nature of the Legion. They are all dead. Any dwarf may join the Legion, so long as he is willing to give up everything he has. The funeral rites are somber. A final just went Porky Pig there, sorry. A final goodbye is said to family and loved ones. Any material goods are dispersed to heirs and last words are said, and then it is done. The new Legionnaire marches out into the deep roads, never to return. The Legion fights against the Darkspawn to the last, striking one final blow against the monsters that have claimed so much of their homeland. Many join the Legion to clear the slate. Criminals join to avoid punishment. The dishonored join so that their houses and families need not suffer on their behalf. The bankrupted join so their debts might be forgiven. A very few join for a last chance at glory, but the Legion takes them too. Kind of interesting now that I'm reading this, that this wasn't an option given to Georgianne when she screwed up at the proving grounds, right? Not screwed up, but when she was, discovered as being a fake. It was either, hey, you're going to go to jail, or you can join the Grey Wardens and go to the surface. They didn't mention the Legion at all. Kind of interesting, because it's this. They're saying like this is a thing you can do to avoid punishment, or if you're dishonored, you can do this so your family doesn't suffer, or if you're bankrupt. So it kind of seems like they would be like, hey, it's either the Legion or prison, and then Duncan would be like, or the Grey Wardens. But they didn't mention the Legion at all. This group, I don't think, maybe they did, and I just don't remember. This group hopes to reach the fabled fortress of Bonamar, once the Legion's home, associated with the greatest of their paragons. Bonamar is a holy place. It's lost the last great blow against the Dwarven kingdoms, and its recapture would be a glorious signal to all of Orzammar. Capture it or no, all of these warriors will die in the deep roads. It is a sobering thought, and I now know why the dwarves say the Legion's charge is the battlefield's most frightening sight. They have nothing left to lose. From Stone Halls of the Dwarves by Brotherton TV, Chantry Scholar. Interesting. So I think I'm not sure that we necessarily cleared it, but I know that the Legion dude that we met, whose name I can't remember if he had a name, Legion Commander, he walked back in after we cleared the bridge. So I'm assuming we helped them recapture it. I'm not sure if that was a full recapture or if they just have a new staging area that's closer to the entrance. I can't remember. House Iduken, Shield of Orzammar. The Assembly has never named a paragon with so little disagreement as there was for Paragon Iduken. No naysayers, only a single abstention. His worthiness was unquestionable, his favor with the ancestors clear. But family rumor says that the man himself was deeply troubled, prone to fits of melancholy and self-doubt. Never satisfied with his great achievement in protecting Orzammar, he died cursing that he had not managed to save the outlying taigs. Before he rose to Paragon, he was of little note. The memories tell us that he never entered a single proving, never sought to elevate his place among the warrior caste. He spent most of his years prior to the First Blight fighting skirmishes in the Deep Roads, keeping them free from surface bandits. Content to live quietly with his wife and daughters. Surface bandits went into the Deep Roads before the Blight? That's kind of crazy. I could see maybe like adventurers going down there looking for treasure. Can't imagine. I don't know, you'd think bandits would have an easier time on the surface where if the jig is up you can run away in any direction versus in the Deep Roads you've got like one or maybe two choices. And they can just follow you, capture you, or kill you. At least on the surface you could be like, quick, hide in this cave, or let's duck into the woods over here and just lay low for a couple days. I might feel like you'd have to be either pretty desperate or pretty stupid to want to be a bandit in the Deep Roads. At least a surface bandit going down to the Deep Roads. When the Blight began, it caught Orzammar in the midst of a vicious inter-house war. Sounds familiar. Most of the warrior caste was caught up in the feuding, for as word of attacks poured in, each great house demanded that the army be sent to defend their thaig, and no house would agree to sacrifice their own holdings for the safety of any others. The assembly was so utterly tied up with the infighting that the darkspawn spread unchecked to the gates of Orzammar herself. In the chaos, Aeducan grudgingly took command of the armies. He enlisted the aid of the mining caste to collapse overrun passages, called upon the smith caste to supply them with arms, and bypassed the assembly and the nobles entirely. With his leadership, Orzammar was saved from annihilation. For his insubordination, he was made paragon. Yet, he always considered it a defeat. From History of Aeducan, Paragon, King, Peacemaker, by Scholar Gertek. Well, it's kind of cool that we've held on to that, the mace, the Aeducan mace, and named our dog Duke after it as well. Just because this character kind of sounds pretty cool. He actually, I mean, I don't know that he'd be a hero of Georgian's necessarily, but he sounds more Georgianish than the other dwarves that we've met. I'm thinking just namely in defending Orzammar from Darkspawn, which he played a big part in kind of ignoring the feuding and, you know, just saying fuck it to this inter-house war shit, there's more important stuff being done. Like, let's figure this out so we can save ourselves. That's kind of who she's been too. Interesting. Okay, Paragons. As I studied among the dwarves, I became aware that their social system was as rigid as the stone that surrounded them. From the lowest servant to the king of Orzammar, each dwarf has a caste, a rigid social standing, which dictates what he may do and how he may do it. What fascinated me, then, was that the dwarves, stubborn and proud as they may be, have built in a way for even the lowliest dwarf to bypass the caste system and reach prominence. Any dwarf who has made an achievement of significance can be named Paragon, elevating that dwarf above all others. To become a Paragon is to be recognized as essentially a living ancestor. Your words are considered ineffable, and the dwarves liken you unto a god. Your family, those you choose to ascend with you, become the founders of a new line of nobility. Indeed, every existing noble house among the dwarves traces its line back to a founding Paragon. It is a rare thing, however. In my visit, I learned that only one Paragon has been elected in generations. The smith Branca, exalted for her discovery of smokeless coal. Smokeless coal? That's why she became a Paragon? I mean, I'm sure that's very important when you were underground and constantly smithing shit. But it's not quite as sexy as I was expecting. I met the Paragon Branca only once during my stay, and I consider it an odd occasion indeed. Surrounded by those of her house, this ill-tempered woman was draped in the finest clothing and jewelry, and was obviously revered even above the highest nobles, perhaps even above the king. Yet she seemed to enjoy none of it. The burden of being a living legend is great, it appears. Statues of the Paragons are found throughout Orzammar, though nowhere so prominently than in the Hall of Heroes, to which one passes on entering from the surface. It is a breathtaking sight to behold, great works of stone all seeming to hold up the ceiling above. It is meant to impress upon visitors to Orzammar of all who have gone before, I think. Wait, that's a weird sentence. It's meant to impress upon visitors to Orzammar of all gone before, I think. I think it would read better. It is meant to impress upon visitors to Orzammar all who have gone before. I don't know why they have an "of" in there. Can't quite make sense out of it. It is also meant to remind dwarves going to the surface, and thus abandoning their brethren forever, of all they are leaving behind. From Stone Halls the Dwarves by Brother Jenna TV, Chantry Scholar. Interesting then that they didn't actually, I could be wrong, but I don't think when we left with Duncan, I don't think they had us walk through that hall. We only saw it when we came back. I mean, obviously we had to walk through it to get out, it just wasn't on camera. I'd be interested, given that they're making a big deal of it as a sign that you're leaving everything behind. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't include that in our origin story. At the conclusion of it, anyway. Orzammar politics. Ah, here we go. Politics, politics, politics. As dangerous as it is to mistake a dwarf's caste, it is far more deadly to mistake his alliances among the noble houses of Orzammar. Everyone in the city is allied with someone, whether by blood or by word. The nobles do not engage directly in commerce themselves, as that is the domain of the merchant caste, but they do serve as patrons. They invest in shops or in artisans' work, and in turn reap a share of the profits as well as a measure of the credit. Merchants and warriors alike benefit from the service of a prestigious patron. Prestigious? Prestigious? I think it's prestigious. Prestigious patron. The relative power of each house is ever-changing. It is usually safe to assume that whichever noble house holds the throne is at the top of the heap, but below that things grow in a tangled mess. Houses ally with one another by marriage. They earn rank and prestige when combatants loyal to them, or from their own bloodlines, win provings. They earn it when artisans they patronize become sought after or well regarded, or when the merchants they invest in become successful. The degrees of power that these achievements confer is so murky, even to the dwarves, that it isn't unusual for nobles to challenge each other to provings over whose smith forges better belt buckles, or whose servants have the best manners. Nor is it out of the ordinary to find two merchants arguing over whose noble patron has won the most acclaim, for the rank of the patron, sorry that was my dryer, is the rank of the client. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the assembly, where the deshers, representatives of each noble house, meet. Although the king technically rules Orzammar, kings are elected by the assembly, and so each king must work constantly to maintain the support of the deshers. Kings who prove unpopular find their heirs deemed unacceptable to inherit the throne. Power then passes to another house. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Jenna TV. All patron-oriented, it sounds like. Dwarven faith. The chant of light is almost never heard in the halls of Orzammar. This is hardly surprising, for, unlike the elves, who were literally abandoned by their gods, or the Devinters who worshipped dragons, the dwarves have no gods at all. Even the concept of worship is foreign in Orzammar. Instead, the dwarves seem to venerate the stone, a name they give to the earth itself. This seems practical for a people living underground, if perhaps a bit unimaginative. Hey! Back off, dude. What the hell? For guidance in spiritual matters, they turn to their ancestors. These ancestors, who are said to have returned to the stone, communicate their wishes to the living via brutal trials by combat called provings. The ancestors' collective wisdom is maintained by the Shaperit, which can apparently store records in Lyrium itself. Set above the ancestors, above even kings, are the paragons, dwarves who have achieved such greatness that they are elevated almost to godhood. These are the great figures holding up the hallway that leads from the surface, the first glimpse of Orzammar that outsiders see. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Jenna TV. It seems a bad idea to have paragons named during their life who can become more powerful than the actual leader of the government. It seems like maybe paragons should only be named posthumously to avoid any kind of questions of authority. Stalata Negat. 913 Dragon. The Blight is building, though it is years from being named by the surface. But the memories know the signs. The Legion has lost Bonamar, though in truth it was lost to the living long ago. The spawn are moving freely and have numbers even the memories haven't seen. They will surge, release, we will fortify and follow. That is the way, and will always be so, until we fall and the surface wonders what has changed. From Chapter 49 of Stellata Nagat, The Stone Unheld, a commentary on the Roll of Years by Shaper Erden. 512 Exalted. The surface declares the fourth blight, a number that means nothing to the stone. In the depths, the events are inverted, our blight spanning the interim years. 7 generations of shifting lines and darkness. Our ancestors are the reason the surface kingdoms don't know a darkspawn by sight, why even their eldest have never heard an accounting firsthand. They believe the blights are defeated by a gathering of allies with singular focus. Eventually, they will be lost by attrition in the depths. The spawn surges and releases. We fortify and follow, although doubts are raised. Chapters 27 of Stellata Nagat, The Stone Unheld, commentary on the Roll of Years by Shaper Erden. 310 Towers. They name it a blight, the third by their reckoning. It was just the fight to our ancestors, continued even though it shifts settings. The hordes that press their broader surge and release, spilling across the surface. What? God damn, some of these sentences are they don't work. The hordes that press their border surge. Oh, the hordes that press their border, comma, surge and release, spilling across the surface. Okay. I thought border surge was a noun. I was like, they press their border surge and release. Yeah, whatever. They fortify and follow. It was not their way to let the enemy rest. 325 Towers. The surface kingdoms declare victory. The horde is crushed, the push halted, and celebrations begin as humans thank the skies and their maker. Beneath their gaze and their feet, the darkspawn retreats to the steps of our taigs. New front lines are drawn across old. They settle into breed. The memories say, as happened twice before, and likely in the darkness before that. Chapters 14 and 17 of Stellata Nagat, The Stone Unheld, commentary on the Roll of Years by Shaper Erden. So basically it's just Dwarf Dude being like, haha, you guys think you fight blights. We're fighting them when you're not fighting them. Orzammar History Chapter 2. I never found Chapter 1? Probably never will at this point. Crap. Well, since I probably won't never read Chapter 1, because I'm not going back to Orzammar anymore. Just trying to see if there are any other Chapter 1. I think I was waiting to find Chapter 2 to read the rest of that. Soldier's Peak, I know I've read all of that. Okay. Well, I'm going to read Chapter 2 because I'll never probably find Chapter 1. We were losing the war against the Darkspawn, slowly, a few men at a time, but losing all the same. The warrior caste was dwindling with each generation as more able-bodied men perished in their prime without fathering sons. With each generation, more of the deep road had to be sealed, more taigs lost forever. The kings of Orzammar watched and wondered how long it would be until nothing remained of our people but the memories. And then Paragon Caridon arose from the smith caste with a new weapon, golems. Giant soldiers of living stone and metal. Each one was an army. With the Paragon's golems, we began to retake the lands we had lost. For a while there was hope that victory, final victory, was coming. But at the height of the war, Paragon Caridon disappeared, and with him the means to make golems. Several forays were made into the deep roads to search for the Paragon, but nothing was ever found. Over time, the golems we had were damaged beyond repair, and we began our slide once again toward extinction. Orzammar as a kingdom, as told by Shaper Zebor, I'm going to say. Characters. Balin, Endrin, Haramont, Ogren, Shale, Sten. Yeah, okay. Balin Ajukin. This is a time for action, not cultured debate. Third of King Endrin's children, Balin has always been considered the last and least of his family. Not the heir, nor the favorite, and not as accomplished as either sibling, Balin's most notable trait was his ability to stay out of trouble. His efforts paid off. He was named King of Orzammar by the Assembly. King Indrid. Denial of the traditions of our people does not qualify as a political technicality. Not sure what that means. I mean, I think I understand what it's going for, but I'm not really sure what why he would say that, what the context is. Endrin of House Iduken traces his ancestry back to the Paragon Iduken, greatest warrior of Orzammar's history, who beat back the Darkspawn hordes in the First Blight. Second son of King Ansgar Iduken. He became heir after his elder brother died in a proving. Most respected king in 4 generations, he restored contact with Kal Shirak, the only other remaining city of the once vast Dwarven Empire which had been lost during the First Blight. Haremont. No one is born with rights to the throne. The sitting king may recommend a successor, but the assembly ultimately decides who will rule. House Haremont is one of the oldest noble houses, as old as Orzammar itself. Endrin's most trusted advisor, Haremont is well known for being an able administrator and the author of many compromises in the ever-warring assembly. His opposition of Prince Balin's bid for the throne ended badly. The assembly named the prince king of Orzammar, and Balin's first act was to call for Haremont's execution. Yeah, I still don't agree with that. I mean, I kind of get it. And if you're struggling for power, you kill the people that were struggling against you, because they're always going to be a thorn in your side. But he did, say like, okay, yep, you're the rightful king, after I handed Balin the crown. If he'd been like, we will never stand for this, then I'd been like, okay, kill this dude. But instead he was like, yep, you win. You're the king. I'll obey you. So I don't know. I didn't think Balin was that ruthless, I guess is what I'm saying. Oghren. Let's see. I'm not saying I guess I haven't read any of his entry to this point. Just wondering if it's one like Sten's where there's something that's been added to the end. But I haven't checked the codex since we picked him up. I'm not saying I should be your first pick for a dance partner at the inaugural ball, but in the Deep Roads, I'm your man. Oghren of House Kondrat was once a promising member of the warrior caste. His house was not especially high-ranked, but many of its members, Oghren included, had won notable victories in the provings and were considered to be rising in prestige. When a Smith caste family with plenty of money but no political connections offered their daughter in marriage, his family accepted the match, and then everything changed. His wife, Branka, was named a paragon for her achievements. All of House Kondrat joined her newly made noble House Branka, and vanished with her into the Deep Roads. As time passed and it became more and more clear that Oghren had been abandoned, he became the butt of jokes throughout Orzammar. He took to drink, which didn't especially help. Drunk and humiliated, he challenged another warrior to a proving over an insult and killed him. The match was meant to be fought to first blood. As a punishment, he was stripped of his house and barred from bearing arms, the only fate worse for a warrior than exile. Grey Warden Georgianne mounted a search for Branka and found her, in the Anvil of the Void for which she led her house to their deaths. Some paragon she was. Shale. What can I say? I have a heart of stone. The golems of Orzammar once made up the vanguard of the Dwarven army, holding back the tides of darkspawn that flooded onto the Deep Roads, but the art of making them was lost, and many of them succumbed to wear and damage in battle. Shale has no memories either of the time spent fighting in the Deep Roads or of coming to Honleith, only a few spotty and bitter recollections of its last master. Georgianne unearthed Shale's control rod and awakened it, adding a bitter, malfunctioning golem to the menagerie of companions. 300 years earlier, she had been Shale of House Kadash, warrior of King Valtor, and a volunteer who chose to dedicate her life for all time to the defense of Orzammar. Sten. Snow Giant in the Cage was sort of this, yeah. Right, that's where I've read to. Sten has an eye for paintings, an appreciation that might seem out of character, but is actually an extension of Kunari discipline. He respects an artist for careful composition, a skill that is as much about where the brush stroke stops as where it begins. Interesting. So if I have painting-type gifts, I'd be giving them to Sten, I presume. Wonder how that was revealed. I guess by giving him a gift that fit? Books and songs. A lot still unrevealed here, too. Okay, that one I've already read, because that was the story that Leliana told. Damn it! I don't have Chapter 1 or Chapter 2. Okay, I'm going to hold off on that one on the off chance that I still find Chapter 1. Oh, I do have Chapter 2, but I don't have Chapter 1. And I don't have Chapter 1 of History of the Chantry. Okay. First Blight, Chapter 2. God damn it. First Blight, Chapter 3. Legion of Steel. Here we go. That's something I can read. Paragon Caridin vanished in the 11th year of the reign of King Valtor, and with the Paragon, the entire process for golem manufacture was lost. Expeditions were sent into the deep roads to track him, but the Darkspawn drove them all back. Finally, in the 2nd year of the reign of Queen Getha, 126 golems, the entire Legion of Steel, were sent to recover the Paragon. None returned. The Shaper of Golems refused to support any further attempts to find Caridin, and the Paragon was officially declared dead. Shaperit never recovered from the loss of an entire legion of golems, and never again allowed an all-golem regiment in the deep roads. From Stone Halls of the Dwarves by Brother Jim TV, Chantry Scholar. You know what I'll say for these chapter ones that I don't have early chapters for? What I'll say, because I think I said last episode that this would probably be the last Codex reading that I do in the main game. I think what I'll do is when the game is finished, I'll do one last Codex entry where if I don't have the chapter 1, the first chapter of all of these, I'll just read what I have so that we know the lore, and then that'll be the end of it. And then I'll do Awakening and all the other DLCs and stuff. In praise of the humble Nug. I once served a human some Nug, and he proclaimed that it was like eating an unholy union of pork and hare. The idea disturbed him so much that he declined to finish his serving and made himself content with some stale bread. Of course, this only goes to show that surfacers, human or otherwise, have tragically unrefined palates. The Nug is surely the most delicious animal I have ever tasted. Only a dead man would not salivate at the thought of a tender morsel of roast Nug melting in his mouth. The Paragon Varen, although his house has fallen, shall always be remembered for discovering the wonders of Nug flesh. They made him a Paragon for it? That's kind of funny. Admittedly, it was discovered only out of desperation when he was separated from his legion and lost in the deep roads for a week. We won't hold that against the good Paragon. While Nug pancakes and Nug gets, my own children love these, that's clever, are the Nug dishes one encounters most often, Nug can be prepared in other interesting and elegant ways. The late King Ansgar Aidukin adored Nug. Seared on a hot metal plate and finished in the oven, and dressed in a cream sauce flavored with deep mushrooms. It actually sounds kind of good, mushroom cream sauce. You must be careful when using the mushrooms from the deep roads, because they often grow close to darkspawn bodies. They say that this is what gives them their unique flavor and intoxicating scent, but also means that consuming too many of them may result in curious afflictions of the mind. From In Praise of the Humble Nug by Bragan Tolban, honored chef to House Aidukin. Traditional dwarven folk songs. Oh boy, this is going to be bawdy, maybe. Nug sits in the mud. Nug wiggles his ears. You catch the Nug, he slips away. Nug gets to live another day. Nug sits in the mud, he wiggles his toes. Nug wiggles his toes. You hook the Nug, he slips away. Now the Nug runs off to play. Nug sits in the mud, Nug wiggles his nose. You tickle the Nug, he laughs away. Now the Nug sits on my plate. Nug pancakes. A well-loved dwarven nursery rhyme. Yeah, the dwarves need to work on their nursery rhymes. Sermons of Denine Renata 1. I'll read it because I'm assuming 2 and maybe 3 will be revealed some other time. I don't know. Unless it's Divine Renata the First, and this is the only entry. I don't know. The weakness of mortal will is the great failing of all the Maker's children. We trade our honor as if it were the cheapest of currency. We do not understand what integrity is or what it is truly worth. From this ignorance, original sin was born. At some time, each of us has thought, what does it matter if I keep hold of my integrity? I am but one mortal. I am powerless. How blind we all are. The virtue of a single slave destroyed the Tevinter Imperium. The dishonor of one man drove the Maker from our sight. I tell you truly, nothing but the integrity of our hearts will win the love of the Maker back to us. It is all the power we shall ever possess to change this world for good or ill. Divine Renata the First, from a sermon on integrity. Where did I pick this one up while I was in Orzammar? It's obviously that's chantry focused. Not quite sure. Notes. What do we got? Load limit reached. Mass will have an effect, he says. As long as it lifts us out, I figure. Should have specified within my lifetime. Gives us time to talk, he says. How's a dwarf get named Shepherd? Mass will have an effect. Got it. Up your shaft. No, really, because blah blah blah. Axe answers, but I still hear. Drip, ground, drip, ground. Worse than his talking. I think I'll drop out for some air. Excerpt. Dwarven verse in 1 volume. Selection. Load limit reached. Anonymous scratching recovered from a cage hoist. Eventually. What the fuck? I get that this is a reference to Mass Effect. It actually says Mass will always have an effect. And it's a dwarf named Shepherd. I sure don't get anything else as a reference to anything. Load limit reached. I don't get it. I don't know. Spellcast, I still only know 1 of 10. And I don't think I've used it very much. Quest related. The Dead Cast. Friends, we have argued long, but I would propose a different direction. It is not unprecedented that one of our number should end up in the Legion of the Dead. The memories attest to some bewildering falls from grace. Only his choice to volunteer has propelled this beyond mere scandal. The question we must ask is, does this serve us? Legion has always seemed a last hope of redemption. If a noble joins their number, by choice no less, this can only do good things for enrollment, and we sacrifice only one foolish member, the last of a troublesome house. His reforms are better shouted at the Darkspawn than in these halls. I say, let him go. This is the writ that was passed, Durius. I hope you can live with your decision, because you're lost to it now. From Assembly Minutes regarding the Legion of the Dead, addendum unknown. Dearest Gilly, I know things have been difficult since the censure of our house. I had hoped to bear the cost of my actions alone, but if I had a full understanding of consequences, I wouldn't have murdered above my caste in the first place. I did not abandon you lightly, but I knew of no other way to insulate you against my shame than by joining the Legion. It is a half-measure that has earned me no right to seek your comfort, but please, I beg you for one moment of foolish optimism. There is talk of a new soldier, a noble. The things I have heard, I will not curse them by voicing them aloud, but it may be a path to respectability for my kin. For you. If there remains any official line open to our name, can you verify he is real, that House Ferald is in good stead? A letter from Maius, and sent. May this report find the proper eyes to affect future tactics. We found an enclave of the spawn, possibly a breeding lair, but we could make no approach. There were far more spawn than anticipated, and I divided the squad to draw the main body of the horde away. I do not expect to survive, but I have made certain that most of my men will see another day. I am torn by this, as my petition will go unheard, and that may curse many more of the Legion that then would die here. But I simply cannot abandon the men I have looked in the eye and called brother. Perhaps they will not thank me for this, believing themselves already dead, but where there is life, there is hope. I will not be the last to see their worth. From a recovered Legion of the Dead field report by Lord Durius Ferald. Oh, so this is the dude who joined the Legion, because he said House Ferald. Yeah. Casualty. Durius Ferald, Lieutenant. Found dead with his squad. The corpse was left untouched, suggesting the Darkspawn feared his spirit even in death. His ferocity defending his men was corroborated by survivors before they succumbed to corruption. It is rare for a soldier's actual death to exceed the honors given at his enlistment. But Ferald was an odd one, an agitator. His eccentric promises were disruptive, and I fear his death may demoralize more of the Legion than actually heard his fantasies firsthand. He was committed to the stone with his insignia, as honorable a burial as we can manage, with the spawn at our heels, but officially he has formed a second front. Better his foolish hopes are diluted by time than killed outright. From a bi-weekly casualty report by Sergeant Unger. Sounds like he acquitted himself well. By virtue of honored ancestry and great personal sacrifice on the part of its last descendant, the joining of House Ferald and the Legion of the Dead is recognized as worthy of investigation by the Memories. If the lineage proves intact and sufficient, relations of the Legion of the Dead may be acknowledged as minor nobility, albeit with restrictions. This minor house will now undergo the generational process of admittance to the Memories. May honor come to its descendants, as recorded by the Memories. Presumably that's the information that I provided to the Memories that made it so that the Legion themselves might become a noble house? Like inheriting House Ferald's ability? I don't know. The Crosscut Drifters. Sounds like a good name for like a bandit gang or something. Fools and renegades, the lot of them. We accept that there is a time for ordered and educated treasure hunting, but not when a foundation remains to be cut. What fortunes have they made? What houses have they elevated? The minor veins they have traced have satisfied neither this assembly nor their own gambler's thirst. Their actions can only grow more erratic and undisciplined, and while no incidents have been reported, they will eventually undermine the stability of a major passage. It is the opinion of this assembly that prospecting be restricted until we can be certain of the stability of the deep roads. These cross-cut drifters can find their fortune in a trade. Let animals burrow wherever their nose points them. Dwarves are meant to excavate by careful degrees. From an assembly memorandum. Rogan cut a beautiful line down a minor vein today, twisting his supports along the footwall like a backbone. He's got a gift for lagging. It's almost crystalline. I swear I could tap it and hear the stones sing. Non-standard by any inspector's measure, but that's the sodding point, isn't it? We're letting the stone take us where she wants, not gouging out highways so the palace can have another pantry. I suspect they will revoke our privileges at the next assembly sitting. I say good luck to them. They'll never find us to deliver the writ. They are afraid of the road we travel. We're close to a major strike. The stone, she's pulling us to something, and to the vents if I'll let dwarves who deny their sense get in the way of it. The Journal of Brunar, founding fellow crosscut drifters. I'm not sure I understand all that. Okay. We found trouble, all right. Rogan's lyrium vein led right to the flank of a darkspawn horde. From the look of their kit, the spawn were a week, maybe less, from breakthrough into that blasted new highway under Orzammar, and they'd be well behind any patrols. The stone knew. She knew, and she drew her chosen with a promise of ore we could taste in our bones. If all goes well, losing this cavern will kill the darkspawn's taste for digging, and Orzammar will never know it was at risk. We'll be a distant tremor, a ripple in the royal fountain. The charges are laid. We know it will work, and we know the cost. The stone has shown us the way home. The Journal of Brunar, founding fellow, crosscut drifters. So it sounds like the drifters were doing things in an undisciplined manner. The assembly didn't like it. But they found some major area that the Darkspawn were, because of their undisciplined manners, their non-standard means of digging, they found some secret way that the Darkspawn were trying to dig in under Orzammar, and then they ended up kind of it sounds like they blew themselves up or walled themselves in order to destroy that passage and trap the Darkspawn or kill them. Sacrifice themselves to do so, perhaps? The Gangu Shade. The stone has a will that surrounds and directs. She guides even when we are willfully blind to her influence, but she is not pure. The stone bears a corruption as old as balance. For the dwarves to prosper, the Gangu, the waste and unstable rock, must be cut away. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce that. I've never seen that word before. I don't know if it's a real word or if it's a word that was made up for this game or what. But like the stone, the Gangu also has an influence. Each of us must face this, must carve the worst of ourselves away. But the Legion of the Dead bears a unique responsibility. Only the fully adorned of the Legion can face the Gangu, can cut into the darkness that afflicts the raw stone. She encircles us, and we must protect her, here where darkness meets light. Legion of the Dead, inscription undated. This is the disadvantage of waiting to read the codex until you have a massing of entries, because if I was reading this as I picked them up, this would make a lot more sense. I'm sure there was some area in the Deep Roads where I found this entry, and if I would have read it, the context of where I was or what was laying around me would have made sense of it, but As it is right now, I have no idea what the fuck this is talking about. The key to the city. While your concerns have merit, the Assembly has made itself clear. Space within the Tig is at a premium, but the intended function of the hall merits the additional resources committed. The statues of the Paragons must be the core of the Hall of Heroes. There is no other placement that so benefits Dwarven interests. It is the first glimpse that service ambassadors have of Orzammar, an introduction not just to our living ancestors, but also to the stone from which we were born. They must see it shaped before they can understand the complexity of its raw form. The hall must also serve a second purpose, as a last site for departing brethren. Those who choose to leave must do so with the heavy gaze of their ancestors at their backs. It is a reminder of duty and of consequence. We will promote all manner of trade, but also reinforce that those who leave for too long will return as strangers to the stone. From an report of the Assembly Zoning Commission. They got a zoning commission, that's kind of funny. Pursuant to Order 5.1a, no dwarf of indeterminate caste may conduct business in the Commons. This was subsequently clarified by the Assembly to mean that the owning and operating of stalls or kiosks is limited to those of identified and approved house names with traceable ancestor lineage of at least 3 generations. Exceptions include individual purchases of goods or services from established stalls or kiosks, provided the funds are presented at the opening of the transaction, at the discretion of the stall or kiosk owner. I'm sure you understand the need to maintain strict quality control over all goods and services that flow through Orzammar, especially when we are making a concerted effort to encourage outside investment. The standards of Dust Town and that of the common brand are simply not sufficient. Your trade permit is hereby denied. From a judgment of the Assembly Trade Council regarding Mydal's reclaimed wares. Not familiar with that at all. It is agreed that no rules of procedure were explicitly broken, but a 5-day filibuster is nonetheless worthy of censure. Division of House Gorosmote property was deliberated for a full session, and forfeiture of the southern estate deemed a necessity. Since the birth of young Cade necessitates his elevation to noble status, it is unthinkable for a noble's family to live in the slums. It is the responsibility of the father to accommodate the placement of his family. It is not possible to simply generate new space in the Diamond Quarter without compromising Tig structural integrity. Lord Dace's comment that if Lord Gorosmote didn't want a new heir, he shouldn't have slummed for a concubine was indeed inappropriate, but the proper procedure for resolution through proving was followed. Both parties agreed to accept his retraction, and that matter is considered separate and closed. The decision of the Assembly regarding the placement of the Duncoat clan stands. Okay. This is kind of interesting in a fly-on-the-wall sort of way. From a writ of the Assembly's Zoning Council regarding the placement of the Duncoat clan. Your efforts have been exemplary, but these self-proclaimed cartels must defer to the Assembly and restore order. Exclusion from caste and society is no excuse. Perhaps suggest that it would be a simple matter to march on the quarter, or simpler still, to withdraw infrastructure support. A tunnel breach would be most unfortunate, but current policy direction prohibits any deals that would legitimize cartel operations. Downward pressure on certain elements of our society has proven useful in shoring up the economy with an excess of affordable labor. It also encourages enlistment in the Legion of the Dead, the one accepted path to partial redemption and a vital force on our weakening front lines. This model suffers when criminals create their own hierarchies with alternative methods of social advancement. Every stone has a face that can't be carved, a side that must be earthward. We need their so-called Dust Town, but it would be inadvisable to include that in your negotiations. We have the utmost faith in you, Captain. The rest is obscured by bloodstains from a confidential Assembly directive regarding proliferation of cartels. Oh. Sounds like that should be relevant to Georgian, but I don't see what it's related to. Obviously, cartels in Dust Town, which she was a member of, but I'm not seeing how that applies to what she's experienced in her life. The Shaper's life. Good grief. When I got to this thing, I thought, oh, we're almost done. But these are long. The blessing of the Shaperit is given only to those who walk with the stone. It is a path that cuts deep, and the road is far from secure, but those who desire to work in memory must first honor it. Document the stone, protect her, and present a new history to the memories. Only then will the blessing of the Shaper be upon you. From the Shaper's Life. Orzammar has carved a legacy from the stone, but history is more than the coming and goings that fill the streets. These caverns are old cuts and well-traveled. The true will of the stone is revealed far from the halls of politics and commerce. The Shaper must step away from the familiar and seek out revelations from the frontier or buried secrets from paths abandoned. The Shaper must first walk away if he is to return. First steps from the Shaper's Life. Far from abandoned, the deep roads are patrolled by those who fight for Orzammar and the stone. These defenders have seen great and tragic events unfold, but they are committed to the moment, not the memory. It is the Shaper's burden to walk this path with a mind to observation. He will fight if pressed. Every dwarf owes that to the stone. But his purpose is to record, not create. Although dark and deep, the old paths are alive with deeds. Only the dedication of the Shaper can ensure they are not lost to the memories. The Old Path, the Shaper's Life. Before the Darkspawn, the stone held an empire. Dozens of tides, each cavern a shade of dwarven pride, communities, separate but united. They fell by degrees. Ruins crumbled into tombstones, a forgotten glory. But the stone is a living history, and absence can reveal more than constant scrutiny does. As the stone shifts, she chooses what remains buried and what must see the light. The Shapers must return, must walk the lost way, so the children of the stone can see what has been surrendered and what can be gained. This is the sacrifice of the Shaper. The lost way from the Shaper's Life. Asunder. I think I read most of this. This is when we got all the body parts together and put them in one place, and then we fought a demon, right? I think I read everything but maybe the last one. Scratchings should be unreadable, but meaning swims in your head as though whispered. The limbs, mere meat. The torso, but a vessel. The head, all but unnecessary. The heart, separate, keeps life. The heart, safe from the blade, can be restored. The heart waits and will fade. Yeah, okay. Unbound! Don't know if I read any of this one. The writers follow after every town, ever since my lucky break deciphering the story. I see it now, how they take the locals closest to me, preventing rest or kinship. I thought this a road to glory, but I am dogged at every step by his talons. Gax Kang. Curse his name in the day I heard it. Ah, right. Gax Kang was that demon who kicked our ass a little bit before he kicked his ass. Journal excerpt from an unnamed, long-dead adventurer. You asked, so I'm telling. Don't go. The stories talk of the riches, but never the names, never where they supposedly spent their wealth. I heard the same tales as Aladdin Denerim, felt the same pull, but it's a lie, son. They may paint a trail, but once you're on it, does it lead to the beast or back to you? Unsigned letter, father to son. 3 weathered parchments with 3 versions of the same incomplete story. Excerpt. And when his kingdom fell, so disappeared the stolen riches of an age. The beast, the unbound, dormant until one of true spirit claims his throne. So must hunt the hero of his people, the principled, who would search for ancient evil. This is how they make a real difference. Scribbled in the corner in shaky hand. 3 pages, 3 ages, same story, updated. Same as the tavern song, but older. Signature torn on purpose, but compare and get Willem Madan. All from him. How? Obviously about Gaxgang. I don't get all the clues, though. I just remember that when he was like, "Behold, Gaxgang!" or I think he said something like that. I just remember thinking it felt like he was describing a kung fu style. Behold my Gaxgang style! Oh, shit. Caged in stone. The inscription is old and worn, overlooked by most as a carving detail. The beast is foreign, but the need is familiar. Home and hearth suffer beneath strength and strangeness. These new kin of this Ferelden are better as friends than strangers, so we resist on their behalf and work with their users to bind with the stone. They no longer fear their skies, and we further our trade above. Lured from above, cornered and corralled, 3 standing in position, a 4th signals the throne. Stasis for the beast, so long as a king holds the throne, so long as a king wills it held. Inscription, circa 590 Exalted. No idea. No idea. Okay. I'm not going to mark all as red because we still have these chapters that we might come back to. But anyway, until we finish the game, that's going to be the last time I touch the Codex. I'll do a little epilogue episode where I read the rest of them before I move on to Awakening and the other DLC. Thanks everybody for sticking through that. The next episode will be gameplay.